And it's great to see, on a very busy day for our Oireachtas, it's great to see so many TDs and senators here, not least the senator on my left, but I'll come back to that shortly. I suppose the last 4 months for Open have been, I hate to use this term, shock and awe in terms of lone parents. And it's good to see representatives from our member groups in here as well. I should have said that first, I'll be shot. In terms of lone parents, absolute fear and concern about the proposed changes. An awful lot of people in Ireland, and certainly in our lobbying over the last few months, it's been very striking how little is understood about our families, how little is understood about the social welfare system for our families. And the shock and awe that was experienced by lone parents in Open and beyond indeed is to do with the fact that, I suppose it's twofold. On the one hand, lone parents were already being subject to reform since last April. And so when the leaking and the rumours started in November, we kind of kicked it to death and said, no, don't be silly, we're already at age 14, how can they do age 7? Nothing has changed since. And of course, in the intervening time, there'd been research showing things like there's 50 jobs for every vacancy, etc. And I suppose the other reason why we were kind of shocked is because the particular department that is proposing to do this has an amazing track record of consulting with our sector. A track record that has been praised in public, the length and breadth of Europe, not to mention within this country. And we hadn't been consulted about it. And Open and Barnardos and the National Women's Council and other organisations in the sector had been consulted about the previous changes. So I suppose we were ill prepared. And it was very hard for us then to offer reassurances to the families that were contacting us. And we had unprecedented contact. So then we started to look in the public domain. And things were being said like, this is about the Troika, it's going to save money, we're in difficulty. And there's, again, two things I want to say about that. We're only too aware that the country is in difficulties. Of course we are. The sad fact is that this measure, if it goes ahead, and we're still absolutely hoping that it won't, will not actually save any money. This year, in 2013, in 2014. In 2015, it will save, and these are the department's figures, 7.6 million from 36,000 lone parents, all of whom are working. And that's the important thing about this. On the face of it, and you hear people talking about we need social welfare reform. We absolutely do. Please, can we have it? But this is not it. Because what will happen is unemployed lone parents will simply switch onto job seekers and not save the economy a penny. And that's part of the fear and the shock that lone parents are experiencing, because we know that lone parents, particularly now, walk in the door of the Dáil office, the FÁS office, the Solas office, I should say, they're not open yet as Solas offices, and essentially get asked, even from the most sympathetic mediators, a lot of questions, naturally enough, about how are you going to manage for childcare, and then get put to the bottom of the list, particularly at the moment where there's huge competition for places. So, highly motivated lone parents, and I want to say this, every lone parent I have ever met wants to move out of. Every single lone parent I have ever met, and I'm 13 years as the chief bottle washer in this organisation, wants to get off welfare. It also takes us away from the reform agenda in a very important way, which hasn't been aired in public before. And that is that in 2006, when these proposals were first put out by the late Minister Seamus Brennan, the idea was that a parental allowance would be introduced. That all low-income mothers, and we are talking about mothers here, I'm not being sexist, 14% of us who are parenting alone are dads, but 98% of us on the payment are mothers. And the idea was that all mothers would get a parental allowance until their child reached a particular age. And that was to do away with the cohabitation nonsense. This measure totally takes us away from that. And it's very surprising, and again the reason for our shock and awe and Open is because the programme for government, one of the only reference to our families in the programme for government is funding permitting, we will introduce a parental allowance. And we know, we suspect, we don't know, that it was a former spokesperson from Labour on social protection who got that in. because it's absolutely close to the heart of the agenda of the last Social Protection Committee. So for all of those reasons, and most of all, as Senator Zappone has said, 7 is too young. It's not a philosophical thing for us in Open, it's a practical thing. If we had jobs, if we had Scandinavian levels of childcare and a proper system where people can afford to pay, etc., we wouldn't be having this press conference. We wouldn't have Dublin festooned, as some of you might have noticed, with free bus shelters. Thank you very much, Open's fairy godmother. And I would not have spent the last 4 months living in and out of the Dáil and the Shannon. So finally, our cause, and I am one, a lone mother, is a very difficult one. We get, even as late as 11:30 last night, Jim Power saying dreadful things about our families on the Vincent Brown show. I want to thank all of you, but particularly my colleagues in the Women's Council in Barnardos, for the solidarity that they have shown us. It's not easy parenting alone in this country. Even in the 21st century, we get singled out on a daily basis. Their solidarity with us and the leadership they have given, and the women who are behind the scenes working hard on this, and Fergus, who had to leave, the CEO, it's not all women in Barnardos, not all women in Open either, have been fantastic. And last but not least, Senator Catherine Zappone, who was one of the first people, along with Senator Van Turnout, to contact us and say, after the budget, and say, I'm making this an issue. And we really appreciate that. And we appreciate the political leadership that it has taken for them to do that, and the solidarity with our families. Thank you.